The slave market on Station Korath 9 smelled like fear and old metal. Creatures from 100 different worlds passed through its holding pens every day. Some were sold for work. Some were sold for food. Some were sold for things that nobody talked about in polite company. Danny Cortez was not supposed to be there. He was a mechanic on a cargo ship called the Rusty Hammer. He had come to the station to buy coolant parts for the ship's engine. But the station was big and confusing, and Danny had taken a wrong turn somewhere between the parts shop and the docking bay. Now he stood at the back of a crowded auction hall, watching things he wished he could unsee. The auctioneer was a tall alien with 4 arms and gray skin. His name was Merchant Zix, and he sold living things the way other merchants sold furniture. Without care, without feeling, just business. A cage was brought to the center of the stage. Inside was something small and white and trembling. Danny moved closer to see that it was a baby animal, about the size of a small dog. It had 6 legs and white fur, and eyes that were pink like sunrise. Its teeth were made of something that looked like crystal, small and sharp. It pressed itself against the back of the cage like it was trying to disappear. "Genetic defect," Merchant Zix announced to the crowd. "This is a Vorak pup. The species is known across 12 star systems as dangerous hunters. But this one is broken. White fur, pink eyes. The mother tried to eat it when it was born. We start the bidding at 50 credits. Good for meat processing or laboratory testing." Danny felt sick. He had grown up on a farm in Nebraska, back on Earth, before the recruitment ships came and took him to the stars. He had raised runts before, baby pigs that his father said were too small to live, puppies that the neighbors wanted to drown. Danny had saved them all. He had fed them with bottles and kept them warm and watched them grow strong. This little creature was no different. It was just a baby. It was scared and alone, and nobody wanted it. 30 credits, someone in the crowd called out. "I will turn it into protein paste." The baby Vorak whimpered. Danny did not think. He did not plan. He just opened his mouth. 60 credits, he said. The whole room turned to look at him. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Most aliens thought of them as strange and primitive, emotional, weak. The kind of species that would cry over a dead pet. Merchant Zix looked at Danny with amusement in his many eyes. The human bid 60 credits. "Does anyone wish to bid higher for this defective animal?" Nobody spoke. "Sold to the human. May you enjoy your purchase, however long it lasts." Danny walked to the stage. He could hear aliens laughing behind him. One of them said, "Humans will form attachments to anything." Another said, "It will eat him within a month." Danny did not care. He paid his 60 credits and took the cage. When he opened the door a little to look inside, the baby Vorak snapped at his fingers. Its crystal teeth cut his skin and drew blood. "Hey, easy there," Danny said softly. He did not pull his hand away. "I know everyone has been mean to you, but that is over now. I promise." The baby looked at him with those strange pink eyes. It seemed confused. It had bitten him, and he had not hit it back. It had attacked him, and he was still speaking gently. This had never happened to it before. Danny carried the cage back to the Rusty Hammer. The ship was old and tired, held together with patches and hope. Its captain was a woman named Lorna Webb, who had been flying cargo ships for 20 years. She was tough and practical and did not like surprises. When Danny walked onto the ship with a cage instead of coolant parts, Lorna was not happy. "Danny, what in the hell is that thing?" "Her name is Ghost," Danny said, "and she was going to be turned into protein paste. It is a Vorak. They grow to the size of horses. They hunt other species for fun. She is a baby. She is scared. And she is mine now." Lorna closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The rusty hammer already had 2 cats, a 3-legged dog named Biscuit, and something that looked like a ferret but came from another planet. Danny had a habit of collecting broken things. "Fine," Lorna said at last. "But if it eats anyone, it goes out the airlock. And you go with it." Danny smiled. "Fair enough." He took Ghost to his small room at the back of the ship. He set the cage on the floor and opened the door all the way. The baby Vorok did not come out. It stayed in the back corner, watching him with fear and confusion. Danny sat on the floor across from the cage. He did not reach for her. He did not try to touch her. He just sat there and talked. "I know you do not understand me," he said. "And I know you have no reason to trust me. Everyone you have ever known has hurt you or thrown you away. But I'm not going to do that. I am going to feed you and take care of you and keep you safe. And maybe, someday, you will believe me." Ghost watched him for a long time. Then, slowly, she crept forward. She sniffed the air near the cage door. She sniffed Danny's outstretched hand, the one she had bitten earlier. She did not bite again. Instead, she made a small sound, something between a whimper and a purr. Then she crept out of the cage and lay down next to Danny, her small body pressed against his leg. Danny reached down and gently touched her white fur. It was soft, softer than he expected. Ghost flinched at first, but then she relaxed. She closed her pink eyes. For the first time in her short life, she felt safe. Danny sat there on the floor of his tiny room, petting the little albino creature that nobody wanted. Outside, the stars stretched on forever, cold and uncaring. But in this small space, something warm had begun. A bond was forming. A pack was being born. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. This 60-credit purchase in a dirty auction. Haul would ripple out across the galaxy in ways that nobody could predict. But that was the future. Right now, there was just a man and a baby animal, alone together in the dark between the stars. And for both of them, that was enough. 3 months passed on the rusty hammer. Ghost was growing fast. She had gone from the size of a small dog to something closer to a Great Dane. Her 6 legs moved with a strange grace through the narrow hallways of the ship. Her white fur had become thick and beautiful, like fresh snow. Her crystal teeth were now 2 inches long and sharp enough to cut through metal. But her eyes were still soft when she looked at Danny. She slept at the foot of his bed every night, even though she barely fit anymore. She followed him to the engine room every day, curling up under the machines and watching him work. When he talked to her, explaining what he was fixing and why, her ears would turn to follow his voice. She did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. She understood his kindness. The Galactic records said that Vorok were dangerous hunters. They said that Vorok were wild and aggressive and could never be tamed. But the Galactic records did not know everything. What the records failed to mention was that Vorok were deeply social creatures. In the wild, they formed pack bonds that lasted their whole lives. They lived for their pack. They would die for their pack. Ghost had never had a pack. Her white fur and pink eyes had marked her as wrong from the moment she was born. Her own mother had tried to kill her. Her own kind had thrown her away. But now she had Danny, and Danny was her pack. The rest of the crew on the Rusty Hammer slowly got used to her. Marcus Bell was the ship's navigator, a tall man with kind eyes and a loud laugh. He was the first to warm up to Ghost. He started sneaking her treats from the kitchen, little pieces of meat that he hid in his pockets. Soon Ghost started waiting outside his door every morning, her tail wagging like a happy puppy. "She is just a big baby," Marcus said one evening, scratching behind her ears while Ghost made a rumbling sound of pleasure. "A big, scary baby with knife teeth. She has never hurt anyone," Danny pointed out. "She bit through the airlock door last week. She was trying to get to me." "That is different," It was true that Ghost had become very protective. She watched Danny constantly. She followed him everywhere. And when anyone seemed threatening to him, she reacted. One day, a cargo inspector from another species came aboard the ship. He was checking their goods, making sure everything was legal. He was rude and impatient, and when Danny did not move fast enough, the inspector grabbed his arm and squeezed hard. Ghost rose to her full height. Her crystal fangs caught the light, and she made a sound that seemed to shake the walls of the ship. The inspector let go of Danny's arm. He backed away slowly, his face pale with terror. Then he ran off the ship without finishing his inspection. He marked the rusty hammer as compliant without checking anything else. "Good girl," Danny whispered, rubbing Ghost's head. Captain Lorna watched this happen with mixed feelings. Having a Vorak on board was useful, she had to admit. But she worried about what would happen when Ghost was fully grown. The answer came sooner than expected. The rusty hammer stopped at a place called Nexus Station to pick up supplies. It was a busy place, full of aliens from many different worlds. Danny took Ghost with him to stretch her legs. Keeping her close on a harness he had made himself. They were walking through the crowded market when Danny felt Ghost freeze beside him. 3 massive shapes were pushing through the crowd toward them. They were Vorak, fully grown, twice the size of Ghost. Their dark fur was marked with patterns that showed their rank. Their eyes were fixed on Ghost with cold intensity. "The albino belongs to the Vorak Collective," the leader growled. His translator turned his words into flat English. "It is defective, but it is ours. Return it, and we will not punish your species for stealing it." Danny stepped in front of Ghost. He was small compared to these hunters. He was weak. He was prey, as they would say. But he did not move. "I did not steal her. I bought her at a legal auction. Your auction means nothing. The traders who captured her had no right to sell her. She belongs to us. She has always belonged to us. Then why did you throw her away?" The pack leader blinked. He had not expected this question. She was defective. She was wrong. Her mother rejected her. So you left her to die. You let them put her in a cage and sell her for protein paste. And now you want her back? Danny shook his head. No, she is not going anywhere. Human, you do not understand. You are small and weak. You are nothing. Do not challenge us. Ghost moved before anyone could react. She stepped out from behind Danny and placed herself between him and the Vorak hunters. She was smaller than them. She was younger, but she stood tall and bared her crystal teeth. A sound came from her throat. It was not a growl. It was something deeper, something older. It was a warning that every Vorak understood. This is my pack. Back away. The pack leader stared at her. He had expected the defective one to cower. He had expected her to submit. Instead, she was challenging him. For a long moment, nobody moved. The market crowd had scattered, leaving an empty circle around them. The air was thick with tension. Then the pack leader took a step back. Interesting, he said slowly. The defective one has found courage. Perhaps these humans are not as worthless as we thought. He turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the crowd. This is not over, human. The collective has a long memory. Then they were gone, disappearing into the crowd like shadows. Danny let out a breath he did not know he was holding. His legs were shaking. His heart was pounding. Ghost turned and pressed her head against his chest. She was shaking too, but not from fear. From something else. From the effort of standing against her own kind. Danny wrapped his arms around her neck and held her tight. Good girl, he whispered. Good girl. I am so proud of you. Ghost made that purring sound again. She did not understand his words, but she understood what mattered. He was her pack. She was his dot, and nothing in the galaxy was going to change that. Word spread through the trading routes like fire. A human cargo ship carried a Vorak guardian, a white Vorak with pink eyes, a defective creature that had grown into something beautiful and deadly. Most species started avoiding the rusty hammer after that. Nobody wanted trouble with a Vorak. Ghost was 18 months old now. She stood as tall as Danny's shoulder, her 6 legs thick with muscle under that snow-white coat. Her crystal teeth could bite through metal. Her claws could tear through armor. But when she looked at Danny, her eyes were still soft. She still slept at the foot of his bed, even though she took up half the room. She still followed him to the engine room and watched him work. She still made that purring sound when he scratched behind her ears. She was a weapon. She was a monster. She was a baby who loved her human father. The job that changed everything came from a merchant named Voss. He was a Talaxian, an insect-like species with large compound eyes and clicking speech. He needed cargo transported through a stretch of space called the Crimson Reach. The pay is triple normal rates, Voss explained. But I will not lie to you. The Crimson Reach is dangerous. Pirates control that space. 3 ships have been lost there this month alone. If you refuse this job, I will understand. Captain Lorna looked at her crew. They had gathered in the common room to discuss the offer. Marcus, the navigator. Danny, the mechanic. The twins Katie and Kevin Park, who ran communications and life support. Old Hector Ruiz, who had been flying ships since before humans met aliens. We need the money, Hector said bluntly. The rusty hammer is falling apart. We cannot keep fixing her with tape and prayers. It is dangerous, Katie said. Pirates killed 40 people last week in that sector. Everything is dangerous, her brother Kevin replied. At least this pays well. Captain Lorna looked at each of them. Then she looked at Danny and at Ghost lying at his feet. All in favor of taking the job? 6 hands went up. Ghost lifted her head and made a sound like agreement. Then we take the job. They entered the Crimson Reach on a Tuesday. The stars looked red here, filtered through dust clouds from ancient explosions. It was beautiful in a dangerous way. Like a snake with bright colors. The attack came on the 2nd day. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in front of them. They were pirate vessels, heavily armed, moving in a coordinated pattern. The rusty hammer was surrounded before they could react. This is the blood price. A harsh voice crackled through the radio. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Cooperate, and some of you might live. Resist, and we will kill everyone and take your cargo anyway. Slavers, Katie said quietly. Her face was pale. We cannot fight them, Kevin said, looking at the tactical screen. 3 ships against 1. They have bigger guns. They have more people. We cannot run either, Marcus added. They have us boxed in. Captain Lorna gripped the arms of her chair. She was thinking fast, but there were no good options. They were outgunned and outnumbered. Surrender meant slavery or death. Fighting meant certain death. Let them board, Danny said. Everyone turned to look at him. Are you crazy? Hector asked. They will kill us all. No, Danny stood up. Ghost rose beside him, her eyes fixed on the airlock door. They have never boarded a ship with a Vorak on it. Captain Lorna understood. It was a risk. A terrible risk. But it was the only chance they had. Everyone to the bridge, she ordered. Lock the doors. Danny, you and Ghost. Do what you need to do. The pirate ship attached to their airlock 10 minutes later. Danny heard the hiss of metal cutting through metal. He heard boots on the deck plates. He heard voices, laughing and confident. There were 12 of them. He counted through the security cameras. 12 armed pirates from different species, all carrying weapons, all sure of easy victory. Ghost was standing next to him in the dark corridor. Her white fur seemed to glow. Her crystal teeth caught the dim emergency lights. She was completely silent. The airlock door fell inward. Smoke filled the corridor. The pirates charged through, weapons raised, ready for scared crew members cowering in corners. They were not ready for Ghost. She moved like white lightning. One moment she was beside Danny. The next moment she was among the pirates, her crystal fangs tearing through armor like paper. The first three went down before they could fire a single shot. Their screams echoed through the ship. The fourth managed to fire his weapon. The energy blast hit Ghost's side and burned her fur. She did not slow down. She twisted and leaped and brought him down. Her jaws closing on his weapon arm. Danny moved behind her with a heavy wrench in his hand. He was not a fighter. He was a mechanic. But he had helped butcher pigs on his father's farm, and he had learned that hesitation got you hurt. He hit the pirates that Ghost wounded. He made sure they stayed down. He tried not to think about what he was doing. It took 4 minutes. When it was over, 11 pirates lay on the deck, dead or dying or badly hurt. The 12th, the captain of the Blood Price, had run back to the airlock and sealed himself in the cargo hold. Ghost sat outside the cargo hold door. Blood matted her white fur, but none of it was hers except for the burn on her side. She was panting, but her eyes were calm. She had done her job. She had protected her pack. Danny walked to the cargo hold door. His hands were shaking. His voice was steady. "You cannot stay in there forever," he called. "Your crew is gone. Your ships are drifting without pilots. Give up now, and you will live." A long pause. Then the door opened slowly. A scarred Talaxian emerged, his compound eyes wide with terror. His hands were raised in surrender. He stared at Ghost like she was a demon from a nightmare. "What is that thing?" he whispered. Danny put his hand on Ghost's blood-soaked head. "That is my dog," he said. "And you tried to hurt my family." The bounty on the pirate captain was enough to fully repair the rusty hammer. But more valuable than money was the story that spread across the galaxy. A human ship had killed 11 pirates in 4 minutes. A human mechanic and his albino Vorok had destroyed an entire boarding party. The rusty hammer never had trouble with pirates again. Nobody wanted to board a ship that carried a Ghost. 2 years had passed since Danny bought Ghost at the auction. She was fully grown now. She was the largest Vorok anyone had ever seen, bigger than any in the galactic records. Scientists said her albinism was connected to a rare genetic change that made her stronger and larger than normal. What had once marked her as defective had actually made her special. Her white coat shone like moonlight. Her crystal teeth could cut through starship metal. She weighed nearly 300 pounds and moved with the grace of flowing water. When she walked through space stations, crowds parted like waves before a ship, but she still slept at the foot of Danny's bed. She still followed him to the engine room. She still made that purring sound when he rubbed her ears. The Vorok Collective had not forgotten about her. Their scouts watched the rusty hammer from a distance. Their spies gathered stories and reports. They learned about the pirate battle. They learned about the human mechanic who had raised an albino pup into the most magnificent Vorok in generations. And slowly, their thinking began to change. The delegation arrived at Station Meridian, where the rusty hammer had stopped for fuel and supplies. But this time, it was not hunters who came. This time, it was someone much more important. Her name was Grandmother Vix. She was the matriarch of the Vorok Collective, the oldest and most respected of their kind. She was enormous, twice the size of Ghost, her dark fur streaked with silver. Her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. She walked through the station with 50 Vorok guards around her. The crowds fled in terror. Species that had never met a Vorok knew them by reputation. One Vorok was dangerous. 50 Vorok was an army. The guards stopped at the docking bay where the rusty hammer was parked. Grandmother Vix continued forward alone. "I am Grandmother Vix," she announced in a voice that echoed through the bay. "I speak for all Vorik. I have come to meet the human who won my granddaughter's loyalty." Danny stepped forward from the Rusty Hammer's ramp. Ghost walked beside him, her white fur a sharp contrast to the dark shapes watching them. Behind Danny, the crew of the Rusty Hammer stood ready, their hands on weapons, their faces tense. "I did not steal her loyalty," Danny said. His voice was calm but firm. "Your people threw her away. I just picked her up." "She was defective," Grandmother Vix said. "She was alone and scared. Nobody wanted her. I know how that feels." The old Vorok studied him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes were unreadable. Then her gaze shifted to Ghost. "You have grown," she said to Ghost. It was not a question. Ghost stood tall beside Danny. She did not bow. She did not submit. She met the matriarch's eyes as an equal. "You are content," Grandmother Vix continued. "You have found your pack. You have found your purpose. You have grown strong." She paused. "You are magnificent." Ghost pressed closer to Danny, her tail swaying gently. The matriarch turned back to Danny. "Human, do you understand what you have done? I adopted an animal that needed a home. You have done more than that. You have proven something my kind has debated for 1,000 years." Grandmother Vix took a step closer. "We believed that pact could only form between Vorik. We believed that strength came only from Vorik blood. We believed that those born different were worthless." She lowered her massive head until her eyes were level with Danny's. "We were wrong." Danny did not know what to say. He had not expected this. He had expected threats, demands, maybe another fight. Not this. "The collective has watched you," Grandmother Vix continued. "We have seen how you humans form bonds with creatures from other worlds. We have seen how you take the broken things and make them whole. We thought it was weakness. We thought you were foolish." She raised her head again and looked at Ghost with something like pride. "Now we understand. It is not weakness. It is strength of a different kind. A strength we never knew." The matriarch stepped back and raised her voice so all could hear. "The one called Ghost is hereby recognized as pack leader of her own bloodline. Her pack, her human family, is granted the full protection of the Vorok collective. Any who threaten them threaten us all." A murmur ran through the watching Vorok guards. This had never happened before. A human pack under Vorok protection. An albino named as pack leader, but no one challenged the matriarch. Her word was law. Grandmother Vix gestured, and several Vorok came forward carrying gifts. Technology from the Vorok homeworld. Star charts showing safe routes through Vorok space. Hunting rights and territories no outsider had ever been allowed to enter. "These are tokens of our respect," the matriarch said. "But the greatest gift is recognition. You have shown us a new way. We will not forget." Danny looked at the gifts, then at the matriarch, then at Ghost standing proud beside him. "Thank you," he said simply. There were no other words as the Vorok delegation turned to leave. Ghost did something unexpected. She lifted her head and howled . It was a sound that shook the docking bay. It carried frequencies that human ears could not hear, but Vorok could. It spoke of gratitude and farewell and promises kept and new beginnings. Grandmother Vix stopped. She turned back, and she answered with a howl of her own. For a moment, the two sounds blended together. The old and the young, the dark and the white, the traditional and the new. Then the matriarch walked away with her guards, and they were gone. And he stood in the silence that followed, his hand resting on Ghost's broad back. The crew of the Rusty Hammer gathered around him, their faces full of wonder. "Did that just happen?" Marcus asked. "I think so," Katie said. "We are under the protection of the Vorok collective. Kevin said slowly, like he was testing the words. The most feared hunters in the galaxy. They are on our side now. Captain Lorna laughed. It was a surprise sound, full of relief and disbelief. Danny, she said, when you brought that little pup onto my ship, I thought you were crazy. I thought you were going to get us all killed. She put her hand on his shoulder. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Danny smiled and scratched behind Ghost's ears. Ghost made her purring sound and leaned against him. I just saved a baby that needed help, he said. I did not plan any of this. That is what makes it special, Lorna said. You did not do it for reward or protection or power. You did it because it was the right thing to do. She looked at Ghost, at this magnificent creature who had once been 60 credits worth of defective meat. And sometimes, doing the right thing changes everything. 10 years had passed since Danny Cortez walked out of that auction with a 60-credit cage and a terrified albino pup inside it. The galaxy had changed. The Rusty Hammer had grown into something much bigger. It was now the Rusty Hammer trading fleet, with 17 ships running cargo through space routes that used to be too dangerous to travel. Every ship carried a Vorak Guardian bonded to a human crew member. It had started as an experiment, a strange idea born from Danny and Ghost's story. Now it was a movement. Humans had a special talent, it turned out. They could form bonds with almost anything. They could take creatures that other species feared or rejected and turn them into family. They could love things that nobody else wanted to love. The Vorak were not the only ones who noticed this. The Drellians started sending their criminals to work with human counselors instead of putting them in prison. The results were amazing. People who had been violent and angry became calm and productive. The crime rate dropped to almost nothing. The Grellians started hiring human negotiators for their business deals. Other species trusted humans more because humans seemed to care about everyone, not just their own profit. Trade increased across the galaxy. The Talaxians started partnering with humans on colony ships. They found that human families were excellent at raising the young of many different species. Human patience and kindness crossed all biological boundaries. One act of compassion in a dirty auction hall had rippled outward like waves in a pond. And the waves kept spreading. Danny was 48 years old now. His hair had turned gray. His hands were rough and calloused from decades of engine work. He had been offered many positions over the years. Seats on the Galactic Council, leadership of major corporations, command of military fleets. He had turned them all down. I am just a mechanic, he always said. I fix things. That is all I have ever done. He still lived on the original Rusty Hammer. The ship was old now, but she had been repaired and upgraded many times. She was comfortable and familiar. She was home. Ghost lay beside his chair in the captain's quarters. She took up half the room. Her white fur had taken on a silver shine with age, and she moved more slowly than she used to. She was old for a Vorak, but her eyes were still soft when she looked at him. Danny scratched behind, her ears the way he had done 10,000 times before. Ghost made her purring sound and closed her eyes. Grandmother Vix came to see me last week, Danny said. She wants to put up a statue of you on the Vorak homeworld. You would be the first albino ever honored in their history. Ghost opened one eye and made a sound that might have been amusement. I told her you would hate it, Danny continued. You never wanted to be special. You just wanted to belong somewhere. Ghost closed her eye again and pressed closer to him. The door chimed. Katie Park, also gray-haired now, looked into the room. Danny, we have a situation. Station Korath 9 is holding an auction. One of our people saw something in the lots. Danny felt his chest tighten. What kind of something? A Vorak pup. Albino. White fur. Pink eyes. Mother rejected it. Danny looked at Ghost. Ghost looked back at him. They both knew what had to happen next. Change course, Danny said. We are going to Korath 9. It took 2 days to reach the station. Danny walked through the same corridors he had walked 10 years ago, Ghost moving slowly at his side. The auction hall looked exactly the same. It smelled the same. The same kind of creatures were being sold for the same terrible purposes. The albino pup was in a cage at the edge of the stage. It was small and white and trembling. Its pink eyes searched the crowd with no hope. Danny walked to the front of the hall. The auctioneer stopped mid-sentence when he saw Ghost. The whole room went silent. How much for the pup? Danny asked. The auctioneer swallowed hard. 60 credits. But for you, human, no charge. Take it, please. Danny almost smiled. Things had changed since his first visit here. He opened the cage and reached inside. The little pup bit his fingers, just like Ghost had done so long ago. Its crystal teeth drew blood. Easy there, Danny said softly. I know everyone has been mean to you, but that is over now. Ghost lowered her massive head to sniff the pup. The little one shrank back at first, terrified of the huge Vorak in front of it. Then Ghost made a sound, a low rumble deep in her chest. A mother's sound. A pack leader's welcome. The pup stopped trembling. It crept forward and pressed against. Ghost's nose. Danny picked up the cage with the pup inside and carried it out of the auction hall. Ghost walked beside him, her head held high despite her age. The crowd parted to let them pass. Outside, the stars stretched on forever. Cold and vast and full of species who spent their lives believing that strength came from power and dominance. That weakness should be rejected. That the broken things were worthless. But humans had a different way. They found the broken things and the thrown away things and the things nobody wanted. They fixed them. They loved them. They gave them homes. And sometimes, those broken things became the strongest of all. Danny looked down at the little pup in the cage. It had stopped biting and was now pressing against his hand, desperate for warmth and safety. I think we will call you Spirit, Danny said. Ghost made her purring sound in approval. They walked back to the ship together. A man and his Vorak, carrying a new life toward a new beginning. Behind them, the auction hall faded into the distance. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited. The story was not ending. It was just beginning again. Because somewhere out there, in dirty markets and cold cages and dark corners of the universe, there were always more creatures who needed saving. More broken things who needed someone to love them. And as long as there were humans in the galaxy, there would always be someone willing to try. Danny stepped onto the Rusty, Hammer with Spirit in his arms and Ghost at his side. The ship's engines hummed to life, and they flew toward the stars. Together,